by the time I started getting MS, that's when I said, okay, like this isn't, I hate to say it, but it's like, it's not fun anymore. I didn't bargain for this. I rolled the dice too far. I put my hand in the fire too much. And I realized I gotten to past the point of where that it started to actually really scare me. And at that point I said, you know what? I am ready to make changes. And I knew I had to change, but I'm ready to do what I need to do because I don't want to live this kind of life anymore. I knew that there was something else out there waiting for me and I would never, ever find it if I was going to be a sick autoimmune person for the rest of my life.
Welcome to the Radical Health Rebel podcast. I'm your host, Lee Brandon. This work started for me several decades ago when I started to see the impact I could make on people, helping them to identify the root cause of their health problems that no doctor could figure out, including serious back, knee, shoulder and neck injuries, acne and eczema issues, severe gut health problems, even helping couples get pregnant after several IVF treatments had failed. And it really moves me to be able to help people in this way. And that is why I do what I do and why we have this show. In this week's episode of the Radical Health Rebel podcast, I invited Josie Warren to discuss how autoimmune conditions are caused by your mind. Health expert Josie had 8 autoimmune disorders: depression, anxiety, ADD, alcoholism, and an eating disorder in her teens and 20s. After years of struggling with traditional and alternative medicine, she was unable to solve her chronic health issues. Thankfully, she found the missing piece that led her to fully heal from all her chronic health disorders in a very short period of time. She's thankful for the gift of her past chronic health issues and lives in gratitude. Josie's passion to help others with chronic health disorders to create fulfilling lives is clearly evident in this episode, and she was really excited to share the missing piece in this episode. Josie Warren, welcome to the Radical Health Rebel podcast. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Lee. Great to be here. Appreciate you having me.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And to kick things off, could you share with the audience an overview of your own health journey, all the challenges that you've been through and how you found the missing piece that led you to healing from all your chronic health conditions in a very short period of time?
Yes. So we're just going to dive in here. So to all listeners out there, I'm Josie Warren, the autoimmune expert. And my story starts with being a kid who just was not able to handle life very well. I was the kid who was a little emotional, who when I moved houses or had an emotional breakup or went to college, I did not deal with the stress and the feelings that I had from the small things or even the big things like losing a parent. And I didn't make the connection at the time, but looking back, it was very clear that as I continued to suppress my emotions and not handle my stress well, my health started to really fall apart. So there was a direct correlation between my health challenges and the suppressed emotional stress that I was carrying. So things like, let's just say I went to middle school and I started getting sinus infections, or my dad passed away and I started developing rheumatoid arthritis, or I went off to college and I developed an eating disorder. I didn't realize that my health was responding to my emotional health. And so I continued to not handle my life well, suppressed my experiences, ran and hid from life and tried to protect myself in the little cocoon, and also became a psychologist thinking that maybe I could solve my problems because I knew there was something going on emotionally inside of me. I had anxiety, I had depression, I had a lot of grief and loss that I just felt like I couldn't get past. And I was in my early 20s at the time, and I didn't know what to do about it all. So I thought maybe if I became a therapist, that didn't work. And around that time, I started to develop more problematic conditions, autoimmune diseases, which is where your immune system becomes overactive and starts attacking different tissues and organs in your body. So after kind of a lifetime of suppressing my emotions and not handling life well, really kind of bombing out in life time and time again, I started to get more autoimmune diseases. So things like Hashimoto's, lupus, which turned into some more scary ones like MS. Started getting MS symptoms, a common variable immune deficiency disorder. And by the time I was about 28, I had 8 autoimmune diseases. I was depressed. I was anxious. I wasn't wanting to leave my house. My life was filled with doctor's appointments. I mean, I had tried all the different restrictive food diets and protocols, and I was only eating about 5 foods because I was reactive to everything else. And I just did not see this is where my life was supposed to be. I had to give up my career as a therapist because my appointments and my blood work tests were taking up all of my time. And at that point, after years of trying medications and supplements and foods and cleanses and trying to get the heavy metals out of my body and the pesticides, I realized that there had to be something I was missing here. So I actually found a practitioner here in Denver, Colorado, where I'm based, and she said, "Hey, there's a place that works with people like you who have chronic conditions and autoimmune, and I think they could help you." So I went to the center that I now work, called a New Life Center, and I met with the founder, who is now my mentor, and I brought my big old stack of paperwork. And I was just expecting him to look at this paperwork, look at me and say, "You can't be part of a study we're having. You're too much of a mess. We can't help you." But he looked at my paperwork and he looked at me, and then he actually asked me something that no doctor or specialist had ever asked me. And this was really that point that shifted everything for me. And again, knowing that I'd been this emotional mess, not handling my life, and my health was a mess, he looked at me and he just said, "Why are you doing this to yourself?" And I was like, whoa, did he just ask me that? Why am I doing this to myself? I mean, no doctor, no therapist, no one had ever asked me that. They had asked me why, about the foods I was eating or the mold that might have been in my house or my genetics. They never asked me, why am I doing this to myself? And I was shocked, but I knew he was right. I knew that my inability to handle life, that turmoil, that emotional turmoil and stress that lived inside of me that I'd just been powering through and pushing on, had something to do with the physical breakdown of my health. And that the connection was not foods or medication, that the bridge to heal was actually going to be me. And that's what he said. He went on to explain, and he said, it's not like people like myself or, do this on purpose, but people with autoimmune, and he was one too. He's like, we don't handle life well. We don't handle our life well. We don't emotionally handle our life well. And there's a direct cause and effect of not emotionally handling our life and being very stressed, and then our physical health breaking down. And that's a good thing, because he's like, there's something we can do about it. So I joined a clinical study they were having for chronic illness, took a whole different perspective, which was looking at me and looking at really taking my power back and realizing that I had given my power away to all my doctors, that I had not been handling my life well, learning the simple tools and skills to build my own ability to handle life and become resilient. And within a couple of months, my body started to heal and self-repair. A couple of months later, was able to get off all my medications and plasma infusions and all these things that I had become dependent upon. And 8 years later, I have no autoimmune diseases. I have nothing. I don't do supplements. I don't have to take any do foods. I'm just a normal, healthy woman. And my body is as healthy as it's ever been. My hair grew back. I don't have my, autoimmune or my eating disorders anymore. I don't have anxiety or depression, and I'm completely healthy. So that was so profound to me, because I thought I was going to die from all of my conditions at that age, that now I teach this. And I want people to know that there is a huge missing piece that's actually going to allow their body to heal, not just manage their symptoms. And the missing piece is them. And that's what I teach. I'm passionate about teaching students how to heal just like I have. And that no matter what disease you have, they're all really a disease of our mind and coming from us. And thankfully, we can do something about it. And it doesn't take foods and supplements and medications and diets to make that happen. It takes us and a willingness to want to be healthy and change.
It's interesting. One of the things you said was it psychology you studied?
Yes, I was a licensed professional counselor.
And it's quite interesting that a lot of people that get into psychology, most of the people that get into psychology actually have a psychological problem.
Oh, that's a great, yes, Lee. I would say absolutely. You'd be hard pressed from my perspective to find someone in psychology that doesn't also struggle themselves. I mean, why do you think we're drawn to that profession in the first place? Not to say everyone, but I would say from my experience, a large majority of us, we are struggling too. And we're trying to find our own answers while also trying to help others. And that's what was really scary for me is that, I went to a great school for graduate school. I worked at a top center, the Betty Ford Center here in the United States for drug and alcohol addiction. I mean, I was doing kind of living my dream career as a psychologist, and yet nothing I learned, no trainings, no teachings, nothing I did ever solved not only my emotional state, but then I had all my health issues going on. So I thought, my gosh, if the experts out there, I'm doing what they're saying, I'm teaching what they're saying, and it's not working for me, either there's something really, really wrong with me, which I thought for a long time, or the truth of what I've actually found out is that I was getting the wrong information, and what they were telling me to do doesn't actually work. Doesn't actually work to fully heal. And that's true for not only Western psychology, but also true for Western medicine, and alternative and functional too. Not to say that these people don't mean well and can't help, but when we have a chronic condition, we want the body to go back to normal. I mean, that's the issue. If I'm taking whether it's a medication or a supplement, or you have to eat a special food to manage and maintain some semblance of trying to be healthy, then that's just showing me my body is unhealthy. And that is something I did not understand. So that's really the perspective. That is the perspective I come from, is we don't want to manage. We don't want to manage. We want to actually heal. And when we're healthy, we shouldn't need any of the things shouldn't need anything to maintain that.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So if I just take you back, what age were you when you had your first autoimmune condition?
That's a great question. So, I mean, again, taking it back to suppressed emotional stress and then the body breaking down. And real quick, there's actually a term for this. It's called the allostatic load. I love this concept. Listeners, you could look it up if you're curious, but it really talks about the direct correlation between suppressed emotional stress and the breakdown of our health. So my allostatic load was getting high from a young age because I wasn't well wired to handle life stress. And as my suppressed emotional stress increased, my health conditions got worse. And by the time I was about 15, 16, probably the biggest stressor of my life happened. My dad passed away, and the grief and loss from that, I did not know how to handle. And I suppressed it all. I held it in. I hid from life. And gosh, about 6 months later, I developed rheumatoid arthritis. And I was 16 years old, and my body had gotten to that place that I started to develop autoimmune. But it wasn't until graduating from college is when I got Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And then from there, I started getting basically a new autoimmune disease about every 6 months.
So for those who kept coming. Are not aware, Hashimoto's is where your immune system starts attacking your own thyroid.
Yeah, your thyroid.
And it normally causes underactive thyroid or low thyroid levels.
That's correct. And I actually end up having Graves as well, which is a overactive thyroid, and it would switch back and forth, which is not uncommon for many people I've found. Yeah.
And you mentioned lupus as well. Can you just describe what that is for the audience?
Yes, well, lupus can come out in many different ways. But for me, lupus really affected my skin. It affected my hair. I had a lot of hair loss. But lupus can definitely be a condition that can show up in different ways and can be challenging to diagnose. So typically I tell people, if you're having symptoms like brain fog or fatigue or hair loss, you want to be checked out for an autoimmune disease, because those are very common symptoms. But Hashimoto's is the most common autoimmune for women. But if you're out there and you're suspecting that you get checked for Hashimoto's, you don't have it, get yourself checked for lupus as well. You might be surprised. Yeah.
And did you mention multiple sclerosis as well?
I did have MS. I started getting early stage MS. Probably about 25, 26 would be. Started with just some neurological things that I tried to brush under the rug. Pins and needles, feeling side of my face hurting and feeling prickly. Losing feeling, or kind of feeling like parts of my body had fallen asleep, really severe pain in my feet in night. And of course I didn't want to think that at that age I was developing MS. That was very scary, and that was really kind of that kicker for me to say, okay, rheumatoid arthritis, Hashimoto's, terrible. But at that time, I thought, well, I can deal with this. But living possibly with a walker or a wheelchair and doing that was something I said, this cannot be my life. And thankfully, that really pushed me into wanting to find something else for myself.
Yeah, it's interesting. I often find, working with clients and even speaking to guests on this show, oftentimes there's a rock bottom event where people, it gets so bad. It's like, I've got to do something different. I've got to sort this out now. I've had enough. Things need to change.
Yeah, you hit rock bottom. And for me, my rock bottom was the moment when I realized I couldn't even work anymore. I was 28 and my immune system was so shot. I worked with children whose parents were alcoholics and drug addicts, and I loved it. But kids are germy, they carry germs and coughs and colds. And I got to this point where I was so getting chronically sick at work, continual sinus infections, everything was taking me out. I wasn't able to be in the office much. And it got to this point, and I got my immune system tested, and they said, you can't be at work anymore. You get sick again, that could kill you, and I just thought, oh my gosh, I can't even be around the kids that I love so much. I can't be in this career that was my dream career. When you have chronic health conditions and autoimmune disorders, after time, you start pushing away and pulling away from friends and family. And I did. I absolutely did. And it was just kind of me in a dark little apartment. This is before we could order groceries. So that was my social interaction every week, was to go to the natural health food store and pick out the couple foods that I could eat. And most of the stuff I could eat was stuff I had to order online, and take my, 13, 14 supplements a day. And my hair was falling out. And I just thought, what the hell is happening? What is happening here? And I was doing everything they told me to do. That was the thing. I was spending thousands of dollars, every few months on practitioners and supplements. And I was looking at every angle I could, medications, to heal. I was doing what they told me to do, but inside I was still an emotional mess, and I wasn't healing. So that to me was so crystal clearly. And for the listeners out there, that should be our sign. If we still have our conditions, regardless of what we're doing, then what we're doing isn't working. And no one told me that. No one told me when I went off on a journey of restrictive food diets and supplements and medication, I'd have to do these for the rest of my life. And that the doctors and specialists actually didn't understand autoimmune and didn't know how to make me fully healthy. I mistakenly thought they did. I thought that they had an answer for me, and they didn't. And that was very sobering. So yeah, I definitely hit a rock bottom, which thank goodness, opened me up to realizing, maybe I should look at myself. Maybe I should stop hiding from the one thing I know is probably the biggest mess of all and look at myself and see what I can do inside to change. And maybe, just maybe, my health might pick up on that. And it does. So, and there's a whole science behind it. I love the psychology of illness. To me, there's nothing more interesting than realizing that it's actually our mind and our thoughts and behaviors that cause us to feel the way we feel, and over time overload our body into physically breaking down and creating disease. And that's a beautiful thing, because we are in control of ourselves and we can undo the damage we have unknowingly done and heal from our diseases. Like, nothing better than that.
What in my work, what I try and get across to my clients is that pain is there to teach you something. So pain is a teacher. The goal is to find out what the lesson is. Now, it sounds like in your experience, what was happening was you wasn't listening to the teacher. So what was happening, more and more pain was coming along, and your subconscious mind was saying, Josie, you're not listening to me, so I'm going to make you listen a bit more by giving you another problem to deal with, to the point where you got to that rock bottom and you said, I need to understand why I'm in this situation that I'm in.
Yeah, 100%, Lee. And I think you brought up a really good point, because I know for myself, for a long time when I had my autoimmune diseases, I was fooling myself, trying to tell myself these came out, oh my gosh, I don't know how this happened. Where did this come from? But again, if we look at the concept too of that allostatic load, and we look back at a life, and I look back at my life, and I've done this, map it out between the emotional stressors that I had, and then at the breakdown of the different health conditions that I was getting. I mean, they line up almost exactly. So if I really looked at all the little warning signs that I had in my health up until, my late teens, early 20s, it would have been no surprise whatsoever that my body then started to move into autoimmune disease. It was no shock, but because I didn't make that connection correlation, it felt like these diseases happened to me, that they came out of thin air, that I didn't understand. But you're right that the body is talking to us when we have these conditions, and we have to listen, because I was just powering through thinking, let me just take this new medication that the doctor's giving me, or let me try these new supplements or infusions and just keep going. And I know that I wouldn't be here if I hadn't had to stop and listen and say, okay, what am I doing wrong? What do I need to change about myself that is causing my body to be in a constant state of disrepair in the sympathetic nervous system and fight or flight? How do I get out of this state so my body can fully heal? And knowing that I tried pretty much everything that I could, thankfully, I knew that then the solution had to be me. And that is changing how I understand and perceive my life, and my body picks up on that, and the body does. This isn't a me thing. Everybody I work with autoimmune and chronic illness has also fully healed. So it's really exciting to know that we feel very confident here. Yes, this is a disease and illness of the mind. And regardless of age or, background or traumatic history, follow a certain process, a step-by-step process of learning how to emotionally handle our life and getting back in the driver's seat and realizing that what we do matters and determines how we feel about ourselves. Then we can actually, we will heal. We do heal, and we will heal, and the body will get out of that fight or flight state.
Yeah, I find in particular autoimmune quite interesting. And I don't know, I'm going to put something to you just to get your view on it. But when I consider someone with an autoimmune condition, to me, it's almost like they're saying, I don't like who I am, therefore I'm going to attack myself.
That's a really good, yep. I love that you said that, because, I mean, for those out there, an autoimmune is your body attacking itself. The immune system, it's supposed to be protecting us. But with a person with an autoimmune disease, it's actually become overactive and is attacking the very tissues and organs in the body that it's supposed to be protecting. I mean, talk about going haywire. But, if we really want to, think about it, the way I think about it is, well, where do you think it learns how to attack itself? Who do you think's attacking itself first, right? We do. I attack myself first. I beat myself up. I make myself feel bad about myself. I continue to make unhealthy choices and behaviors. I get scared of life. I hide away. I feel like I need to protect myself, which makes me feel even worse about myself. I'm constantly feeling like I'm not enough, or I should be doing something different, or I missed the boat, or, I'm not who I should be right now, or I can't get past the challenges that I think everybody else can. And that dialogue that we have with ourselves, I call that inner turmoil. That's beating ourselves up. Of course, our body's going to turn on itself too. I mean, to me, that's the psychology of illness. It starts with us. And the good thing is, though, is that we can change that. And also, I think, hope the listeners can see, knowing that it comes from us and how we perceive life and the choices and behaviors we make that make us feel not good about ourselves, make us feel bad. Can we see that, I didn't make this connection early on, but if I decide to take lysine supplement, for instance, and throw some fish oil in my diet, that's great, but that's never going to address how I'm emotionally handling my life and the beating myself up I'm doing and the choices and behaviors I'm making every day that are making me feel bad about myself. Of course, big ones like not being in an unhealthy relationship, or not, not handling a new job well, or being overly stressed about world events, but also things like every day pressing my snooze and driving to work in a hurry, and eating through lunch and not eating healthy. And not taking care of myself and staying up too late. And we make a pattern of these unhealthy behaviors, or pushing myself too hard and being a perfectionist. Of course, that's going to degrade how we ourself and degrade our health into a place where we get stuck. Reach a tipping point and then get stuck in that sympathetic nervous system in a state of fight or flight. And our body thinks we're under a constant stress all the time, because we're perceiving life as a constant threat and stress all the time because of how we feel about ourselves and how we're perceiving the events of our life. So again, supplements, foods, diets, that's not going to solve that. And neither is brain rewiring or just talking about it. We need to know, how do I change my perception of life? How do I actually go out into life to learn and to grow, to be in the driver's seat, that what I do matters, that I am the cause and the effect of my health. And then we can take our power back, and then we can actually heal. Yeah. So, yeah.
That's great. So what would you say are the differences and the similarities between Western medicine, functional medicine, and alternative medicine?
That's a really good question. I know there's the clear areas that they're not similar, right? Can you compare Western medicine to alternative or functional medicine? Those are completely, for the most part, different camps. I know, and I tried them all. So I went to some of the top Western medicine doctors, and they're going to be looking at the body as the problem, and they're going to be prescribing me medications typically, or maybe surgery for what I have. But if you're going to go in the route of alternative or functional medicine, they're saying, we need to look at more of a holistic perspective. We're going to be looking at, a myriad of things. Of maybe we're going to look at do some blood work. We're going to look at the foods that you're eating. We're going to look at the environment or the toxins that are there. Let's look at your genetics. And so the issue that I have found that I didn't realize at the time is, again, that they're all working on the body, focusing on the symptoms of the diseases, whether that is the symptom of leaky gut, or whether that's the symptom of hair loss, or the symptom of fatigue, or the symptom of like a skin condition like eczema, where I'm putting something on it. We're working on the symptoms, whether that's with prescriptions or more natural methods. But the issue is that I would call it the problem is that they're all symptom management. And this is something that, like, I wish someone would have put the puzzle pieces for me together sooner. So listeners out there, if you have a condition, if you're working with Western alternative or functional medicine, just please listen up, because this is going to be very helpful, is that regardless if it's natural or prescription, again, it's symptom management, which means you're using something to manage the symptoms of your disease, the symptoms of your condition, and you're not actually getting to the true root of it. Because Western medicine doesn't know the true cause of autoimmune disease. You look it up, they're very blatant about that. We do not know. Could be some things we don't know. More functional medicine says it's root causes. But to me, that's them saying we don't know either. It could be a couple of things. But there is only one root cause, one real origin of autoimmune disease. And if we're working on the symptoms, we can't get better. So I didn't realize that when I was doing supplements and diets and also medication, using all Western functional alternative, all I was doing was going around in circles, working on symptoms that were always going to keep coming back, flare-ups that were always going to keep coming back, because it wasn't getting to the true cause of why is my immune system dysregulated? Why is my immune system not working properly? What they can't understand because of their training is that all autoimmune diseases, the problem is the immune system. So for me, it didn't really matter that I had lupus and MS, or that I had Raynaud's syndrome and arthritis. Like, really didn't. I was doing symptom management, treating those symptoms. That wasn't going to heal me. I had to get to the real cause of why is my immune system not working properly? And if we get to the real cause of why is the immune system acting is in a dysfunction, and we solve the dysfunction, well, then all the autoimmune or all of the chronic conditions that came from that resolve naturally. So they're chasing, and from my perspective, they're chasing something, they're chasing the wrong thing. Because if they actually had the solution for autoimmune diseases and chronic illnesses, it wouldn't be epidemic like it is today. We wouldn't have all the people with autoimmune continuing to get more autoimmune. And you wouldn't go to someone and they would say, hey, try this supplement or try this medication. This might work for you, but it might not. This might help your symptoms or it might not. If you were really getting to the true cause of why the immune system is in a dysfunction, everybody would get better. And like I said, everybody we work with gets better, which is why we know that autoimmune, again, is a disease of the mind. It's coming from us and how we're not emotionally handling our life. And when we handle our life and we take back our power and control and learn how to perceive life in a new way, psychologically, our body picks up on that, gets out of fight or flight, heals and self-repairs, moves into the parasympathetic nervous system where you go back into homeostasis. And from there, the immune system goes back to normal functioning, because your immune system's not supposed to be overactive. Go back to homeostasis, normal immune system, you heal and self-repair everything. So symptom management is not the solution, and it's lifelong. The solution is us. The reason you haven't been getting better is because you've been managing your symptoms. And that's what I wish someone would have told me.
When 35-year-old Amanda first scheduled to see me, she'd been suffering for 19 years from severe IBS, diarrhea and fecal incontinence, along with abdominal pain and bloating. Her condition had not only made life uncomfortable for Amanda, but very inconvenient, as she had to walk 2 hours to work every day along a route that had public toilets, and she'd never been on holiday as an adult because of her condition. The only advice that several doctors and specialists had given Amanda was to take Imodium, and when she first saw me, she was taking 5 Imodium a day and wasn't getting any better. To help Amanda, I ran tests to find out what foods were right for her metabolic type, to see which foods she was sensitive to, and to assess her gut microbiome. Tests showed that Amanda had several food sensitivities and a parasite infection. Over the coming weeks, I coached Amanda to eat right of her type and to replace the foods she was sensitive to, and a protocol to deal with her parasite infection. And after 3 months, Amanda was IBS-free, and she also reported her skin was much improved and she had lost weight. And she booked a holiday for her and her husband to New York, as they've never been on a proper honeymoon because of her IBS. And if you're suffering like Amanda was, and you want to get to the root cause of your problem, you can arrange a consultation with me at www.bodycheck.co.uk. And if we're a good fit, I could help you achieve the same kind of results as Amanda. Now, back to the podcast. Yeah, it's interesting as you've been speaking, I've been thinking of that famous quote by Hippocrates, which is, you don't treat the disease the person has, you treat the person who has the disease.
Correct. 100%. That's, it's so fascinating to me, Lee, and to the listeners out there, because, we think about all the millions and, probably billions of dollars that are spent over time, right, on autoimmune and finding the cure. I mean, things, Alzheimer's, for instance, that's an autoimmune disease. Think about all the money that's going into that research, into that, finding a cure, but no one's pulling the pieces together because everyone's so focused in their little area of expertise, whether that is Alzheimer's or whether that is the endocrine system or whether that is say the leaky gut or the skin, or the foods, that all of these conditions are really just conditions of the problems of the immune system, period. Doesn't matter how rare the condition is. It doesn't matter how long we've had it. Doesn't matter our genetic background, makeup. Our body is in a state of disrepair because we've not emotionally handled the stressors of our life, and the choices and decisions we've made in our life to run and to hide and suppress our feelings has caused our body to go into a state of emotional stress and overload. And that has caused the immune system to be overactive. So it's us, unknowingly, when we work with us, right, the person, not the disease, then we can actually heal. But that leads me into another, thing that the biggest challenge I have found in the work that I've done, because listen, like when I got healthy, I thought it was a miracle to me. And I trained to work here. This is my passion. And I thought, there would be people lined up out of the door here that wanted to heal too. And one of the biggest surprises I've had in the time that I've been here and doing this work is realizing that the first step in wanting to heal is you as a person, we as people have to actually want to be healthy. We have to want to be healthy. And that speaks to what you talked about earlier, Lee, about kind of the psychology of people with autoimmune. We are people we do hide from life. We don't have high emotional intelligence. We're not a resilient bunch. And when we get an autoimmune disease, I know this, no one talks about it, but it is the perfect excuse out of everything that you don't want to do in life. I didn't have to go out and date. I didn't have to try as hard at work. I didn't have to go to school when I didn't want to. I didn't have to go to family events. My friends wanted to go out. I had the perfect excuse. I had a flare up. I mean, we are people who inherently are looking for a way out of life because life feels scary, because we don't feel like we're ill prepared to handle it. So then we have an autoimmune disease. When you have the perfect excuse, no one's talking about, can you see the challenge here of wanting to actually get better? I mean, I'm going to be honest. I didn't want to get better for a long time, so I pretended like I wanted to get better. And I put on a big show and got a lot of attention from people, hooking myself up to the plasma infusions, poured me, and taking all my supplements and bringing my special foods to, restaurants and dinners. Poor me. I'm so ill. I can't eat anything. I mean, but I knew inside I was an emotional wreck and I was hiding from life, and I had some awful behaviors that were very obviously causing me to feel bad about myself. Like, I didn't really want to get better because I liked the excuse that I had with my illnesses. And I find for people that the biggest roadblock that most have in healing is themselves and the very real threat of, can I do my life without these diseases? Who am I going to be if I don't have this excuse anymore? What is life going to look like if I don't have this security blanket to hold myself in? And I like to tell people, hey, I get it. It's okay. And if someone would have told me that, I've been really mad at them. But everyone I've shared this with who has autoimmune, they're like, oh, you know the secret. I'm like, yeah, I know the secret. I used to have autoimmune. I know what you're doing. So we have to overcome ourselves and realize that it's so much more challenging to live life hiding and ill prepared for life and putting on a front and scared and making up excuses and trying to get attention through unhealthy ways. It's so much easier just to be a normal, healthy person, feel good about yourself, have the tools and skills that you need, and go out into life to grow and to learn and know you're going to be just fine. But we have to trust ourselves. It's okay to leave the illness nest. And so many don't want to leave that nest. And you have to be ready to fly out of that nest to actually heal. Because if you don't really want to get better, nothing you will do will ever work. And that's something that no one talks about that's really important for healing out there.
Yeah, what you've just described, I call the illness currency. I don't know if you've heard that term used before.
I haven't heard that term, but that's very interesting, the illness currency. Yeah. Does you mean kind of like the give and the take, the I call it the benefit, but the benefits that you get from being a person who identifies as a person who's sick, whether that's chronic illness, whether that's maybe depression, or whether that's, an autoimmune disease, they're all coming from the same place.
Yeah, what I think for some people, where that comes from, obviously in the first 7 years of life, our brain, the brain waves that we have are kind of, in accordance with like a hypnotic state. So we don't really have the ability to adapt, if you like, to our environment. What happens is our environment just gets downloaded into our brain, right? So when you're young, most people start school at 4 or 5 years old. Now all of a sudden, they're not with their mother all day, right? Which I guess to most people that age is quite a shock, right? Because all you've ever known is being with your mum, right?
Right.
But you realize that if you're sick, you get to spend all day with your mum and you don't have to go to school.
Did you read my biography, Lee?
No.
That is,
So obviously at a subconscious level, your mind, your subconscious mind is 1,000,000 times more powerful than your conscious mind. Your subconscious mind is saying, whatever you do, don't be well, because you only get love and attention when you're sick. So if you're healthy, no one's going to love you. Now you can say that to someone who's unwell and they'll say, don't be stupid. Of course I don't want to be ill. I want to be healthy. But that's their conscious mind. But their subconscious mind is saying, oh, no, you don't. You do not want to be healthy. And what tends to happen is you get the saboteur archetype, the victim archetype, and the eternal child archetype rearing their heads so that you don't put yourself in a position where your subconscious mind thinks you're not going to get any love or attention.
Yeah, that's good. I agree. And I would say from my perspective, and then from my own perspective of living this too, that it's not as much about no one will love me if I'm not sick as it is of I am scared of whatever it is in my life at that time, whether that is my job, whether that is a test I have at school, whether that's when I was a kid, a bully that I'd have to see every day. Let me pretend to be sick. First, it was pretending, but let me pretend to be sick so I can stay home so I don't have to do that. So I can hide away from that. And then for me, it was no shock that over time I actually did get really sick. And then I had the perfect excuse because I'd learned it so early that that illness and sickness is a free pass out of the life I don't feel prepared to handle. And then but similar, the bonus is the attention we get from it. Yes, my mom would, give me soup and we had grilled cheese sandwich. I get to watch daytime TV. It was like, this is way better than having to deal with the tests and the stressors at that time of school. And then that translates into adulthood. But for me, the core issue here is that people who do that, which is people like me, people like autoimmune people, chronic illness people, we are people who in our nature aren't born well wired to handle life, to handle stress. If we were, we wouldn't be looking for a way out in the first place. We wouldn't be those kids who were, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 looking for a way to fake sick and be home, for instance. Not that every one of us does that, but most of us do. We all have some kind of narrative of finding ways to hide from life. And then we get an illness because over time, running and hiding and having unsupportive choices and behaviors that make us feel bad about ourselves and suppressing all the emotional stress, that eventually breaks down our body. And then we get the ultimate excuse, which is a diagnosis. I had such a dual experience when I was first diagnosed with autoimmune disease. He said, you this is what you have. You actually have this autoimmune disease. And I said, what is this? But then part of me was just relieved. Like, oh, thank God, finally have something I can tell people for why I don't want to do the things, why I feel the way I feel. People finally leave me alone. It's like I had the perfect reason, and I was relieved and slightly excited in some really sick, weird way. But of course, also on the outside, sad and depressed about it, but also relieved. That says something. So we have to realize, to me, it comes down to there's a psychological term called locus of control. And it's a term that says, where is the control in my life? Is it external? I mean, an external locus of control, meaning that the things and the people and the events and the past and the circumstances feel like they're running my life? Or do I have an internal locus of control, which means the power and control of my life is in me and I'm in the driver's seat? And what happens when we have a chronic health condition or an autoimmune is we lived our whole life with an external locus of control. We have been at the whim of whether it's a childhood, friends, parents, teachers, or as we get older, the world events or our jobs or our spouses or our kids or our family. And we feel that everything's happening to us, and we're unknowingly a victim. And we are in the passenger seat, and everybody else is in the driver's seat of our life, driving us around. And it's a very disempowering, out of control experience. And that's where we live when we have an autoimmune disease. Because again, we're not emotionally handling our life well. We're thinking how we feel is because of others. I thought it was because of my past. I thought, well, because my dad died, of course I'm sick. Because of trauma I'd been through, of course I have these conditions. But no, when we realize that we are the way we are because of ourselves, and we develop an internal locus of control. And it's just a perspective shift. Realizing and this is really important. This is why my mentor, David Cope, says this. He says, I am where I am today based on the choices and decisions I have made. When I realized that, that kind of allostatic load perspective, that if I go back in time and realize that it was me, that it was how I didn't know better, but how I did not handle my life well emotionally and handle the challenges of my life that led to the breakdown of my health, then I can realize that what I do matters and put myself in the driver's seat. And you put yourself in the driver's seat of your health too. And when we're a victim and we have an external locus, we can't heal from autoimmune. When we have an internal locus of control, we're in the driver's seat. We know what we do changes and has the direct impact on our health and our emotional health, then we can make different changes and choices and we can actually heal. So yeah, I think the currency of health is 100% true. And sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow, but it needs to be said because I needed someone to call me out in a loving way so that I could really get honest with what I was doing and say, oh yeah, someone else knows. And yeah, I am using this. And do I want to be this person anymore?
Yeah. Something that popped into my head as you were speaking then. So, you're talking a lot about people with autoimmune conditions generally are people that just find dealing with life quite difficult.
100%.
Have you looked into why people end up finding it difficult?
That's a good question. If you would have asked me that question like 10 years ago, I would have said, 100% it's because of my parents. My parents didn't know how to handle life. They fought. They made me feel unsafe and insecure growing up. And I would have 100% said it was my genetics. It was my family. Autoimmune also runs in my family. So it would have just been like the perfect answer. And that is what we are taught, especially in our Western culture and our Western psychological model, is you got to look back at your upbringing or your parents as the cause for why you can't, for why we can't. But again, back to that locus of control, that's something that we can't change. if I think it's my parents that are the fault, then there's nothing I can do about myself. I am put myself in a little glass cage to ever change. So what I've actually realized, and this is my perspective, Lee, is that the reason people with autoimmune and chronic health conditions don't handle their life well emotionally and hide and run away, it's truly just my belief how we were born. It's just how we were born. Because I have two other siblings and we had the same upbringing. And they are very moderately well-adjusted, just normal people, right? Didn't develop autoimmune, healthy, normal people. Me, and you can see it, I know from a young, earliest memory onward, I was just more sensitive to life, just more emotional. And I find people with autoimmune and chronic illness, we are just born more sensitive people, whether male or female, and oftentimes more emotionally affected by life. And not knowing how to deal with that sensitivity and that inability to kind of emotionally handle challenges of life. And to me, it makes perfect sense if that's our inherent nature, separate from biological family or genetics. That's just kind of how we popped out into this beautiful world. Then life happens. We all have the same kinds of things that happen in our lives. Siblings being born, going away to school, like you shared, it's a great example, being separated from our mom. Going to high school, picking a college, having a romantic breakups and jobs and having children and losing ones we love. We are already, the cards are stacked against us because we are overly sensitive. We don't know how to handle all that we're feeling. So of course we're going to run away eventually, and we're just going to try to stuff it in the best that we can and move forward. And if that's what has caused our chronic illnesses and autoimmune diseases. But it's just, if we can just accept, it was really freeing for me to accept that it's nothing wrong with me. Nothing wrong. The person is autoimmune. There's nothing inherently wrong with you. You just are a more sensitive, kind, sensitive person who was kind of not made for the world that we have today. And when we learn how to handle the world that we have today, then we can grow and build our natural capability to do life and to be resilient and to bounce back and to be emotionally intelligent. And life no longer feels scary and hard and painful. And then your body picks up on that. You get out of fight or flight, you heal, and you self-repair.
It's interesting. And the reason I asked that question is because I've got a theory floating around in my head. And it's quite interesting because when you said it's not your mum or your dad, my theory includes your mum and your dad, right?
Oh, okay.
So when a baby is in the womb, the baby's hormonal system and therefore their autonomic nervous system is completely under the control of the environment of the mother, right? So if the mother's in a stressful state, she will release stress hormones into her system. They cross the placenta. The mother's stressed, the baby's stressed, right?
Right.
So the 9 months that a baby is in the womb is preparing itself to survive the environment once it's in the world, so to speak. So if your mother is, meditating 5 hours a day and doing yoga for 2 hours a day and just chilling and, the baby's going to come out and think, oh, this world's easy, right? Now, that could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing, but they're going to come out into the world not overly in their sympathetic nervous system. They're going to be a pretty chilled kind of kid, right? But if it's the opposite, let's say, their mother's in an abusive relationship, they've got money issues, that they might already have 6 or 7 older siblings, the mother's in a really stressed environment. Well, that baby is preparing to come out into the world into a very stressful environment.
Right.
Now, what we also know is that if someone's in that stressful environment when they're in the womb, the same as what happens to us humans. If we're in a sympathetic state, that fight or flight state, well, it dictates where our blood flow goes. Because if we're in a state of fight or flight, our blood is shunted to our muscles and to our brainstem, our reptilian brain. Well, our reptilian brain reacts like a reptile, right? There's only three things a reptile will do, right? It's only after safety, security, and procreation, right? And eating, right? So when a crocodile wakes up, the first thing it thinks, am I safe? The next thing is, what is there to eat? Then the next thing is, can I reproduce? That's it, right? So the other thing to bear in mind as well is if a baby's born into that environment, the blood flow didn't also go to the organs. So quite often the internal organs aren't developed quite so well. As the same is with the neocortex of the brain as well, it isn't as well developed if their mother was very stressed during pregnancy. So it does make me wonder if there is something in that, in terms of, there are some people born in this world that can cope fine, and there are others that are born into this world and they find it more challenging to deal with the world. That's just a theory that popped into my head.
I love it. I think that, I find that really interesting too, Lee. And I actually have thought about that too. I'm not going to lie. I've gone down the thinking of like, well, what, if we're all born from a mother, what impact might that environment that we have, in the womb have on our nervous system and have on our bodies as we come out into the world? But for me personally, then kind of looking back at different examples, I mean, I have known mothers that were the most high stress mothers, and then they've had these babies that are just the most chilled out, relaxed child you'd ever met. I've also known mothers who they did all the things they thought they were supposed to do. They drank the green juice, they went to their neonatal yoga. They tried to make sure that they were de-stressed. They took some time off of their work, and they've had the most high-strung little kids you could ever imagine. And so the variance is there. You're not being so relaxed
not
and
being
so
ready for the environment in which they were born in.
Not being,
if they came out and they were too relaxed, but actually the world they came into was quite,
was different than
if it was quite an aggressive world that they come into, then it's gonna freak them out even more. I mean, it's quite interesting because I'm just thinking of myself. I was just so chilled as a kid. Always, I mean, I still am now. I'm just so chilled, but I would say I could cope really well with life. Even as a child, even if I had challenges thrown at me, I dealt with them. But the other thing that I'm thinking also, and I don't know, what your thoughts are, that everyone's got their own different views, but also things like past lives. Could past lives have an effect on the current one?
That's a good question.
And also things like human design as well. Again, I don't know if you're into human design, but the time that you're born and where on the planet you're born, and all those things can also have a difference, and they might potentially play a role.
Yeah, no, that's really good thinking. And I know for myself, and this is what I have found helpful for me, is that I did in the past, because I had all these conditions, right? I had these emotional issues. I mean, I thought, what the heck is going on? Like, is there more? What am I not looking at? Like, what did my mom do or do not do to me or with me when I was in the womb? Or, was there some kind of past life that I had that's unresolved that was maybe causing all the unbelievable challenges that I felt that I was having in my life? And what I have found is that for me, that was not a supportive perspective to actually heal, because it, again, was unintentionally giving me that external locus of control perspective, which was, there's things outside of my control that are the cause of my internal condition and experience, thus disabling me from being able to heal. So what I have found, like 100%, is that regardless of where we come from, meaning whether a child was born, into foster homes, and that person grew up into an adult that had a very challenging childhood and had autoimmune or chronic illness, or whether that other person is a child that was born to a very good family with good parents that stayed together, that supported them, and that child still went down the road and didn't handle their life well and ended up with autoimmune disease or chronic illness, that regardless of, let's say, our genetics or our past, or even you could say some might say a past experience or a past life, what we can control is ourself now and how we perceive and understand our life and the life that we have. And that's all we need to do to heal. So for me, like, the other stuff is fun to look at or is kind of a curiosity, but when I looked down some of those perspectives to say, well, is this why I'm so messed up? Nothing I could do could change those things. Nothing I could change, the signs that I was born into, or the way the moon was, or the way that my mom was, but I could change myself. And the cool thing is, and I think this for me, Lee, kind of goes back down to something that we don't think about as much, is that regardless of what our human experience has been, we're all human. We are all human. And that is what an empowering way I want to join us all together to realize that in that similarity of all being human and all having the same human body, the human body and our human mind, they all work the same. So regardless of kind of whether we had the cards stacked against us here or farther back, or whether we had the best natal environment, prenatal environment or not, or best home life or not, we're all humans, and inherent to us as humans is our natural ability to be adaptive and resilient to life, meaning to be able to get back when challenges happen, and to be resilient and to get back to be adaptive and to keep going and become stronger. And we know that that's how all humans, it's core to our being, because we wouldn't be here as a species evolved like we have if our ancestors weren't wildly resilient, able to handle the everyday challenges, like fire and famine and flood and food that were variables of survival every day. But the way I actually see it is, it's not about things out of our control. It's actually realizing that we are not very resilient these days. We don't have to be, because life is the easiest that it's ever been in the history of mankind. And those with autoimmune diseases, if we think of resilience like a muscle, it's just gotten really weak. So when we grow and build our natural resilience, and instead of hiding from life like I did, and instead of developing unhealthy patterns of behaviors that make me feel bad about who I am and suppressing my emotional experiences and stress, instead saying, I'm going to jump out of the nest and just go back out into life, to fall down, to get back up, to become stronger, to learn, we activate that shared human experience of natural resilience, and thus naturally learn how to handle life well for those of us with autoimmune who are a little bit more or deficit in that. And from that's all it takes for a body to no longer be perceiving life as a threat anymore, because you know how you can do it, and you know you can handle it, and you have the muscle to heal and self-repair. So that's my perspective, is focusing on the self. But I can understand others' perspective, and I've definitely looked down some of those routes too. But what I found is that I couldn't find that it effectively unknowingly disabled me from healing myself.
When 30-year-old Litsa came to see me, she had severe cystic acne, including big red boils and scarring all over her face. She had one of the worst cases of acne I had seen at that point. Litsa had tried everything her doctor and dermatologist had suggested, such as antibiotics, hormone medications, creams and lotions, and her skin continued to get worse. As you can imagine, Litsa's confidence and self-esteem was at an all-time low, and she also suffered from anxiety. Litsa felt unattractive and concerned that her partner would leave her because of the way she looked, and she was worried about being alone for the rest of her life. I made it clear to Litsa that we had to find the underlying cause of her acne. So I ran some tests, and we found out that she had food sensitivities to dairy, soy, and gluten. I coached Litsa how to replace those foods in her diet, and also advised on other foods known to cause acne, as well as other essential lifestyle factors to balance her hormones and detox her body. It was a long road for Litsa, but Litsa has been acne-free for many years now. Her confidence and self-esteem has returned, her anxiety has gone, and she is now happily married with children. If you have acne and you want to get to the root cause of the problem, why not arrange a consultation with me at www.bodycheck.co.uk so you can achieve the same kind of results as Litsa. Now, back to the podcast. So, I'm going to take you back. You hit rock bottom. You said, right, this is it. And then you came across your mentor. Can you talk us through the process you went through in terms of your own healing?
Yes, that's a great question. So they had a chronic illness study at the time. And chronic illness, for those out there, I know I've been throwing this word out, so let me define it. It is any condition basically that doctors and specialists don't have a solution for, that's an ongoing illness. So it could be something like chronic pain or migraines or asthma, but a chronic illness also falls under the category of things like an autoimmune disease like lupus, MS, fibromyalgia, Hashimoto's. And I fit the bill because I had a whole bunch. And I joined their chronic illness study. And the hypothesis of this study was to say truly that they believe that illnesses are a disease not of the body, but actually of the psychology of the mind. And meaning how we are, the choices we're making in our life and how we're perceiving this life and stress that is actually causing the body to react over time and eventually go into a state of disrepair. And the thinking was, if we change how we understand and perceive life so that it no longer feels like a threat, and we feel like we build the capacity, that resilience to do life, that the body will heal and self-repair. So that's what I joined into. And I think one of the most important things that I learned, it was about 3-month study. And I didn't think that I was going to get any better. I'm going to be honest with you. I thought, like, this will be great. I'm not working right now because I'm so sick, so I'll just do this. But within probably 6 weeks, I was shocked. I was able to go, like, I live in a state here in the United States that has a lot of mountains, and I was able to ski up in the cold winter. I would have not been able to do that because of my Raynaud's disease. I lost all circulation. I was able to go skiing. I was able to start eating foods I hadn't been eating. Like, I had a beer I hadn't had in forever. I was sleeping through the night. My hair started growing back. This was happening within about a month and a half. And I said, whoa. And it was all happening by learning, by educationally learning perspectives and concepts really based around that idea of locus of control, which helped me kind of crack open and realize that I had been living in denial. I had been thinking that I was in control of my life. I had been a therapist. I was empowered. I knew everything there was kind of to know about life and psychology. And I realized, no, I'm not. I've been a victim to my past. I am blaming the things that have happened to me for why my health is broken down. I wasn't working at the time, and I was clearly hiding away from life and had pushed away all my friends and family. And I did not realize that what I was doing and had done in my life actually unknowingly had caused my health to break down and me to feel ill-prepared, feel scared, and over time reach an emotional tipping point where my body tipped over and was living in the sympathetic nervous system in fight or flight constantly because I was so scared of life and I wasn't handling it well, and I was continuing to make unhealthy choices and behaviors and decisions. And so them even just sharing that with me and saying, hey, it's actually just you, and life isn't the way you thought it was. Light bulb. I just could not get over it. I had thought I was the way I was because of my parents and my genetics, and that was my training and my background in psychology. I didn't know that I was the way I was because of me. But that made sense to me because everything I tried with my past and with my genetics and with foods and with toxins never actually solved my issues. But when I started to learn through the program that I did, the study that I did here, that it's just me and that life isn't this hard, scary place, but it's a place to grow and learn. And they taught me how to get back out into life and to trust that I had what it took, and to re-empower myself and put myself in the driver's seat by realizing that the choices, big and small, that I made every day actually drove emotionally how I felt about myself. And that was really important. I thought that what I did didn't matter. I really did. I was like, my health is my health. What I do is what I do. My choices and behaviors, these are separate. No, they taught me here that the choices and decisions I make every day, that it's actually the small ones that matter most. That those caused me to feel how I felt about myself at that time, really bad about myself, beating myself up. And that over time, that is what caused me to move into the sympathetic state, and move into fight or flight and get stuck there. That it came from me. And then all I had to do was change what I did and realize what I did, the choices, the decisions I made in my day, the little things like not snoozing my alarm and going to bed on time. I mean, simple things that made me feel good about myself. That mattered. And then that put me down a whole different trajectory of actually healing. Because when I feel bad about myself, life feels hard and scary, right? Simple. When I feel good about myself, life can still be challenging, but I feel capable. Like you talked about, Lee, you thankfully naturally had that, but feeling capable in your inherent ability and resilience to do life. That's what I learned how to do in the clinical study. And without me even realizing it, this organic process started happening where my body started to heal because I got out of fight or flight, body moved into the parasympathetic nervous system, went back into homeostasis, immune system went back to normal, and my symptoms went away, and I healed and self-repaired, all by learning really that what I do matters and that I drive my experience of my emotional experience and my health by the choices that I make every day.
So how did you get from signing up for the program or the research to the point where you realized, oh, this is about me, I'm in control? Like, what was the process to get from between those 2 points?
So if I'm honest about like when that really clicked, the clicking point for me, and I would call this the awakening that I had, it truly was, like I shared in the beginning, that first introduction meeting that I had with the founder of this work. His name is David Cope. It was that moment when he said to me, why are you doing this to yourself? And up until then, I had only been asked, about my health, like, what foods are you eating? What kind of water are you drinking? What antibiotics did you take when you were younger? What's your family history? No, that's all stuff outside of me. No one had ever asked about me. Like, what's your role in all of this, basically? Where was the me in my conditions? And when he said that, I just needed someone to confirm that basically for me, and it clicked. And I didn't know what quite to do with it at that moment, but all I needed was those two puzzle pieces to snap together for me to start that healing process, because I needed to have that confirmation that yes, the way I'd been living my life and not handling my stress emotionally was why I was having these conditions. I needed that. No one had confirmed that for me. And then I knew, okay, and then I came here to learn a new way. and it's just education is all we need to learn. And then I healed. But it was the me piece that I clicked in when David, my mentor, said, very lovingly, like, why are you doing this to yourself? I said, oh, you were right. It is me. I knew it. Wow. Why is no one telling me this? And from there, everything changed. My whole life changed.
But I guess you must have been ready to hear that.
Yeah, the good point, Lee, because that goes back to I wasn't ready for a long time. And for those out there, if you want the excuse of your illness, you will never heal. I wanted the excuse of my illness because, I was this close to getting on disability, which would have been like the worst thing I could have done, which means I didn't have to work. I basically got money every month. At that time, I was kind of on my own disability where my family was giving me money every month and I wasn't working. And like, why work? Why go back to a job if you don't have to? But I had to stay sick in order to get all the benefits. So I had crafted this life of what I thought was ease, but it was actually just a complete life of darkness and suffocation. I had crafted this life where I didn't have to do anything. I wasn't ready to give that up for a while. I had a life where I got attention. I had a life where I felt important. I had doctors that knew me. I had a medical community that felt like, felt like I was friends with my practitioners. I mean, my illnesses were my identity. I wasn't ready. I had to be ready. And by the time I started getting MS, that's when I said, okay, like, this isn't, I hate to say it, but it's like, it's not fun anymore. I didn't bargain for this. I rolled the dice too far. I put my hand in the fire too much. And I realized I gotten to past the point of where that it started to actually really scare me. And at that point I said, you know what? I am ready to make changes. And I knew I had to change, but I'm ready to do what I need to do because I don't want to live this kind of life anymore. I knew that there was something else out there waiting for me, and I would never, ever find it if I was going to be a sick autoimmune person for the rest of my life. So, yeah, I had to be ready. And that's for everybody. And if you're not ready, it's okay. Like I wasn't for a while. Give yourself some time. But when you get to that point where you just say, I can't do this anymore, and I don't want to be known as this person with a sick person with disease or illness, and I'm ready to just go back out and re-enter society in a healthy way and not be quote unquote special anymore, but learn to be special in the wonderful person you just naturally are, not special because of your conditions, then you can take that step out. And his statement kind of pushed me out of the nest a little bit, but I decided to walk. And it was I'll say this, in the face of a lot of people in my life. And this is something interesting too for those out there, that when you have a chronic health condition or an illness, your family and your friends, they get used to that. And an equilibrium is built of you being the person that is kind of downtrodden, and them being the ones that you go to for help. And there's kind of a power differential there. And when I was faced with the prospect of actually never having my healing and not having my conditions anymore, some of the people in my life that I still love dearly, but they were threatened by that. Would I need them anymore? How would that change our relationships if I got healthy? They didn't say this, but that's the psychology of illness as well. As there's a whole system that we build when we have illnesses of people around us, and that's very threatening to the people around us when we get better. Kind of like when an alcoholic gets sober. I was an alcoholic also, but those out there who've been in recovery, they know that it's very interesting experience when you make a huge positive change and you think everybody's going to be on board, and they're not. And some are actually against you for getting better. So you have to do it for you. You have to want to get healthy for you, and know that you're going to find out who's on your team and who's not. And some of the people that you think were on your team, it's going to be sad, but it's all going to be for the longevity and the health of you living the life that you want to live.
Yeah, that's really interesting. What I would be really interested to hear is, what would you say to someone who perhaps has had an autoimmune condition for a long period of time,
mm-hmm.
and yet they still haven't hit the kind of rock bottom that you hit, but they may have been ill for 20 years, let's say. So that,
yeah,
I guess the fact that they haven't gone and done whatever it is they need to do to heal themselves, what would you say to those people?
Well, I would say if the first step is honesty. And what I didn't realize with myself, and this is what for context, the first step in the program that I do with my students is I meet with them and we take about an hour and a half and we do a symptom assessment. It's the only time in the program, other than the very end, that we talk about their symptoms. But in that hour and a half, I tell them that this is for two really important reasons. The first is the obvious one. We want to make sure your program was successful and your body's in the parasympathetic nervous system and is healing and self-repairing. But this is going to speak to you what you asked, Lee. The second reason that I do that symptom assessment is because those of us with autoimmune, what we do, yes, there's some of us that maybe have gotten to disability point and are really just out of the world, but most of us are out there living a life, having kids, or having a career. And if we were to actually deal with the severity of our symptoms and what it's really like for us day in and day out, we wouldn't be able to continue the life that we have. So as a result, we are suppressors. People with autoimmune, we suppress the experience way, way down as a coping survival strategy. So I have met many people who have had autoimmune for, 10, 20, 50, 30 plus years. And I have almost never heard anybody say, "Oh, this is the worst thing to me." What I hear people say is, "Oh, it's not that bad. Oh, yeah, I have Hashimoto's and I'm on medication and I'm on levothyroxine, but I can manage it. It's fine. It doesn't affect my life very much." And that is a story, again, the psychology of illness. That's the story we tell ourselves. That's what I did. I had 8 autoimmune diseases and I was still going to work and I was powering through, not wanting to face the music of how I was really feeling and the symptoms and conditions I was experiencing every day and everything I was having to do to cover it all up. It's exhausting. So for people who are out there and they're like, I haven't hit rock bottom, it's not that bad, I would say take a second and actually go a little deeper. Because what we've realized is you can't heal, and this is really important, you can't heal from that which you cannot see. So when we as humans suppress what's really going on with their autoimmune disease and say it's fine and say it's okay, I'll take the daily medication, just keep going, you will never actually be able to heal because you're suppressing what's really happening. But when you can take it, be honest and take it out and put it in the open and say, yeah, this is actually, I'm having brain fog every day. I'm forgetting things at work and it's embarrassing. And I have to take notes and that my coworkers don't see. And it feels like I'm getting Alzheimer's because my brain is so foggy. Or, when you realize that, I'm so tired, all I can do is get through my workday, and I have a 2-year-old at home and I'm so checked out when I see them and have to watch them that all I want to do is go to bed. I mean, that is the real experience. And when we can actually see that, and we can say, okay, this, I do want to get better from this. This isn't just manageable and livable. And when you take it out in the open, you can actually heal and get better. So it's normal. I want to tell people that it's understandable and reasonable that if you're out there with autoimmune, you've had it for a while, and you're telling yourself that it's fine. It's okay, but don't do that to yourself anymore, because that is truly only harming yourself and disabling you from getting better. And it's when we actually, in a constructive way, say, what's really going on? Am I really experiencing my life? How has my life drastically changed because of this autoimmune disease? And what am I not doing in my life that I wish I could be doing because of this? Then you can find that fire inside of you to say, you know what, I'm ready to heal. But if we deny it and suppress it, we cannot heal. And so that would be my best advice to anyone with an autoimmune disease, because I've never met anyone, when we're really being honest with each other, that does not have the autoimmune disease hasn't really impacted their life in some very noticeable and negative ways. If they've had it for, let's say, 6 months to 2 years down the road, right in the beginning, maybe not, because you're not really getting as many symptoms. But after some time, yes, everybody has it. It greatly impacts all of our lives. And if you can open your heart up to knowing your own experience, then you can find that place to heal. You don't have to bottom out and hit rock bottom, but you can find that this isn't the life you want to live anymore, and use that as inspiration to stand up for yourself.
Yeah, there's a famous quote by a psychologist called Jerry Wesh. Are you familiar with Jerry Wesh?
I'm not. I'm going to write that down.
He says, if you have a big enough dream, you don't need a crisis.
Oh, that's great. I like that. Yeah, that's my hope for people. Like, most of my students, when they come to me, like, they've tried all the things and they've hit that rock bottom. I mean, they've gone years of Western and alternative functional, but every now and then I'll get a student who's like, this is like one of the first things they're doing for their autoimmune, and I cannot applaud them more because I'd say, wow, good for you to not have to hit that rock bottom to do something that's so different than anything else out there, that you did it first. and that you just knew right away that this isn't what you wanted for yourself. Because it's a dangerous disease too, because not only does the body keep breaking down and we are more susceptible to other autoimmune diseases, which usually happens. That's why I developed like 8 autoimmune, but psychologically we get more and more entrenched the longer we have an autoimmune disease, with the excuse and that, like that currency that you were talking about, Lee, that the autoimmune gives us. And the longer that we become entrenched in the benefits of being sick and the hiding that it allows us to do from life, I do find psychologically, the more challenging it is for someone to want to break away from that. Think of it as almost a codependency that becomes developed with your own illness. So if you can get that nipped in the bud early, it's so much healthier than waiting longer, because the truth is you become more entrenched in it. But it's still easy to come out of it. But that's what I find with people. The longer they have it, the more attached you become to it, the disease.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I've got one more kind of big question for you. So let's imagine someone's got Hashimoto's or fibromyalgia or whatever it might be, and they come to see you. What's the experience going to be like? What do they go through?
That's a really great question. The first question that I always ask someone if they're curious about working with me is, we work from the standpoint of the psychology of illness, and I have to know that this is a person who wants to get better. That is all that it takes, Lee, for someone to heal. It's that one thing. Is this someone who actually wants to heal? And typically I find that out when speaking with them. If someone is open to this perspective and they're like, I know what I've been doing. They're like, I know what I've been doing hasn't worked. I haven't been handling my life well. I have had grief and loss, or I've had past experiences and I haven't moved past it. I'm a sensitive person. I know it's me, but I just don't know how to change that. I know I'm stuck in a fight or flight. Then I'm like, great. But if someone says, no, how dare you say that? It's my genetics. It's things I can't control. Then I would just lovingly say, something else would likely be a better fit. And I would send them to a different pathway that would be more supportive for them. But when someone can say, yes, I want to get healthy, and I can see that there's a me that can do that. And then I say, great. We do a symptom assessment, and they start in a 13-week program, week by week, learning the key steps of how to emotionally handle life and how to take back their power and control and put themselves in the driver's seat again and re-empower themselves so that they feel good about who they are, that they reconnect with their own capacity to be resilient and to bounce back. And for a lot of those out there, especially like busy moms and dads, they think that they have to change their life in order to change their stress and their emotional experience. They learn week by week that they keep the very life they have, but they put on a different set of glasses, so to say, for it. And it no longer feels inherently hard or stressful. And they learn the natural ability that some were born with, which is just how to handle the challenges of life. And that's what I teach them. And my students have an option to either work with me or they work self-guided on their own. And the program works if they follow it as designed, and in just a matter of months, they're in the sympathetic or they move from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic nervous system. Their body is healing and self-repairing, and they become a person over time without autoimmune or chronic health conditions. And I support them in the emotional piece of how to get back out into life and know you have what it takes and feel good about who you are and grow and learn. And, to me, my autoimmune disease is like 8 years. It's like a thing of the past, and it becomes that for my students too. So they just reach out to me, and if they want to get healthy, then it's a good fit. And if they're ready, they're not quite ready yet to fully heal. No judgment. That's okay. I usually let them know about different kinds of symptom management practitioners that could support them with where they are in their journey.
Awesome. Yeah. Good. So earlier on, I mentioned, or I put it to you that autoimmune conditions are often when people don't like themselves. So their own cells are attacking their own cells, in effect.
Correct. Yeah.
And I guess one of the things that's kind of really jumping out at me right now is that someone with a autoimmune condition almost certainly probably needs to learn to love themselves.
That's a good you made a good point that I don't typically talk about that, Lee, but yes, it kind of goes without saying what happens, the effect of, again, being a sensitive person, how we're all wired with autoimmune or chronic illness, and feeling emotionally overwhelmed by stressors of our life, and then in turn not handling our life well, running away from life, and developing unsupportive daily behaviors and bigger behaviors that make us feel bad about who we are. Is we feel bad about who we are because we look around and we see other people doing it. We see other people seems like achieving and handling life, and we're not. And we start to beat ourselves up and become the most cruel person to ourselves in the world. And of course, that's the opposite of love. And so for me, you would have asked me if I loved myself when I had my autoimmune diseases. I would, of course I do. I have some self-love. I do my yoga. I tried to meditate. That was a mess, but I didn't. And our health is telling us that we don't love ourselves. And what I see is learning how to reconnect with yourself, right? Which is really building your own inherent trust in who you are and your own natural capacity to do life. That is the process of learning to love yourself and reconnecting to the truth and the wonderful person and the capabilities of who you naturally are. So yes, what people will find in the process and moving into the parasympathetic is that over time, you continue to live in that state. You continue to learn to not only trust yourself, you learn to trust life and your capabilities. And the side benefit of that is you start to build a loving relationship with yourself. Yeah, it just it's a beautiful, healing is a beautiful thing. Like people think, is this going to be scary without my conditions? And I say, no, you're going to walk into a life that you didn't know was possible, and you are going to feel all of you, and in a way that you didn't know was possible either, free from all the challenges and the pain of the past and the hurts that we thought were the cause and have held us back in the past. We're so much more powerful than we know, as humans.
Absolutely agree with that. So from what we've said, I would summarize by saying if someone has an autoimmune condition, and this probably goes for most, I deal with chronic conditions, that's all I deal with. So this probably goes for most people, but there's something that you mentioned that keeps coming up, so I'm going to add it in. So first of all, I think people need to be very clear on what their dream is, right? Because if their dream is big enough, they don't need a crisis. So they need to get clear on their dream. They need to focus on their dream every day. So, a lot of people say to me, how do I stay motivated? Well, you stay motivated by being very clear every day on what you're doing things for, right? Why are you doing certain things every day? Well, it's to achieve your dream. The next thing I would say is learning to love yourself. Because if you love yourself, you're going to look after yourself. The one thing that you mentioned that I'm going to add in is resilience. And I always say, when I take clients on, I always say to them right from the beginning, this isn't a quick fix. There's going to be ups and downs. Now, the word I don't use is resilience, but that's exactly really what I'm saying is, when you have those down moments, and everyone does, you've got to be resilient, and you've got to, again, keep your eyes on the prize, stay focused on the dream to bring you back into alignment with what you need to do.
I like it. Yeah, that's, and I think too, for me, Lee, and for what to the people out there, like the message I want them to take away is that I thought healing was really complicated. I thought that I had to do all of these things. They're like mindset work or, really had to be someone that I wasn't. And when we have autoimmune, you guys, we're a mess. We all know it. Last thing I'm going to be doing is creating some like my I didn't even have a goal of like living, like I didn't even know what I was going to be doing the next day. That's kind of where I was coming from. And so I just want people to know, because healing can feel really hard and scary of like, oh my gosh, it's all these components and all of these variables, but I want people to know that healing is simple. It really is. Healing is simple. Your body is waiting to heal. It doesn't want to be in the sympathetic nervous system. It's unnatural for you to be there in fight or flight. It's just like waiting. And the first thing, all you need to do is just decide, I'm ready. I'm ready to let go of the illness, and I'm ready to step into something new, because I handling my life in that way and hiding and having illness as an excuse isn't really the person that I want to be. And I want something more for my life than that. And when someone can just make that clear choice of, I want to be healthy, that's all truly they need to do to start that path. And then, of course, learn from my perspective, learn the education that they need to of how to build that resilience, how to do life, have that internal locus of control, be in the driver's seat. It's very simple. It's a step-by-step process. And then I think two other things I want people to take away is symptom management, meaning whether it's natural methods or Western methods, you're managing your symptoms. You can't heal by managing symptoms. That's an ever-changing, wheel that you're going to be going around for the rest of your life. You want to get your immune system to go back to normal. And that happens with us, again, learning how to emotionally handle our life. And then something I don't think I shared, but I just want to put this out there, that I want people to know with chronic health or autoimmune, your goal should not be remission. Remission is what we're told that is the best we can do, which is a temporary alleviation of the signs and symptoms of our disease or condition. But the problem with remission means we still have the condition. I didn't realize that if I were to have, I didn't get to remission. Thankfully, I don't have my conditions, but I was trying for remission for a long time. And I didn't realize, even if I ever got there, which is very rare, that it's only temporary, because it's only a matter of time, taking it back to life and stress, that a life stressor is going to be thrown our way that we don't know how to handle because we're overly sensitive and don't handle life well, that will emotionally cause an upheaval that will throw our body out of remission with a big old flare up, and then we're back at square one again. So we don't want to aim for remission. We want to aim for, let me get the body back into homeostasis in the parasympathetic nervous system and get my immune system permanently back to normal functioning again. And that happens without the need for medication or supplements or food diets. We do that. And we do it by learning a new way of constructively handling and psychologically handling our life that's healthy and supportive. So I just want people to know, what I didn't know was aiming for remission. That is a really stressful, really challenging, almost impossible thing that will not last. Why don't you just aim for not having the condition anymore? And that's what I want people to start to realize, that that's an option for them. That's the door I want to be opening for people today.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it's been a really, really great interview. What's next for you, Josie?
Oh, thanks, Lee. Wonderful to have. Just really appreciate you giving me the space to share my thoughts and share what I know for illness and the psychology of it. And for those out there listening, I know what I'm sharing is different. I know you're not hearing this other places, and I love that. And I know it can be controversial naturally by nature. And I like to tell people, hey, if you were listening to me today and you have some more questions, or you have a rebuttal, or you want to know more, reach out to me on my email. I will leave that for Lee. We'll put it in the show notes, because we have some fun, exciting things here with what I'm doing. I just released the most updated version of my 13-week program, the Autoimmune Healing Program. I also just released the Chronic Illness Healing Program, and both are a 13-week program that, followed as designed, you can not aim for remission, but your body will go back to the parasympathetic nervous system and will heal and self-repair your condition. So we're so excited about that here at our office. I've worked really hard on that program. It's been over 20 years of research going into that. And then also I'm launching a new YouTube channel called the Autoimmune Tipping Point, meaning what do you need to do to tip your body back into homeostasis in a state of healing and self-repairing. And so check me out at the Autoimmune Healing or Autoimmune Tipping Point on YouTube, and yeah, I also have a website, the Hashimoto's Fix. .com. You can check that out as well. And I just love hearing from people, love supporting people in healing. So thanks for letting me share.
That's great. Josie, thank you so much. It's just been a really fantastic discussion.
Thank you. It's been wonderful to be here, Lee. I appreciate it.
So that's all from Josie and me for this week. But don't forget, you can join me same time, same place next week on the Radical Health Rebel podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to give the show a rating and a review, and I'll see you next time.